Later this year will mark the 10-year anniversary of the game Undertale. Despite Toby Fox's inexperience when developing the game, the charming characters, hopeful themes, and immersive storytelling, supported by its memorable soundtrack, have cemented the game into a grander part of modern culture. Thanks to many Let's Play videos and its $9.99 price tag, the fanbase grew exponentially, with many possessing creative minds. Creative minds with a love for putting the world and its beloved characters in alternate scenarios. These scenarios can sometimes be silly what-ifs, other times they can change the way we view the game, but there are ones that can make your flesh crawl. Like I said in the opening sequence, Undertale's massive following led to countless AUs. People wanted more of the story and characters, so as a result they made more. When it comes to AUs, one of the most popular is of the horror variety. Who wouldn't want to see their favorite characters go through the most horrifying scenarios possible? They can either be someone exploring their dark, twisted mind, or they can be well-crafted experiences. While the game itself isn't scary at all, I'd argue that it has grounds for horror. There are already themes like death and existential dread, not to mention the existence of monsters. What we have to do is make everything a bit more grim and dark, rid the world of its cheerful elements, alter the characters' personalities to make them more disturbed, while making it so that they visually appear gnarly. We also can't forget to put Frisk and in turn the player in constant fight or flight. All of that is what Undertale horror AUs do and more. Up first, we have Underworld. This AU is made by a Tumblr user named Coolsart, before they eventually moved on from the project. Still, it exists in multiple mediums including a blog site, art that is both official and fan-made, as well as a fan game. We have our usual horror AU trope of making everyone a lot more bloodthirsty and animalistic, but there's a catch. The setup for this story differs. Originally, Underworld was made to be the result of the player tampering with the game files so much that it corrupted the monsters, causing them to go irreversible changes. Although, according to the wiki, things have seemed to have changed, as now this world is a result of a multiversal being corrupting the universe. I much prefer the former due to the fact it's unique. I mean, sure, the trope of corrupted game copies is nothing new, but this particular execution is something I've never seen before. No matter what setup the story follows, the rest of the story remains untouched. I think I need to mention that everything that happened before the events of the game still happen. The corruption occurs after Frisk falls down. Also, the only possible path to take is the genocide route, all without the ability to save or reset. The AU starts off with Frisk falling into the underground, this time breaking an arm when they land. And all the artwork I've seen of this version of Frisk, they don't have a blank face. Instead, they're either sad or in fear. I mean, who can blame them? Give this bitch a Caniac combo. They come across Flowey first, which in the fan game, they are initially distrusting of Frisk. However, this version of Flowey isn't as psychotic as all the other characters we'll soon encounter. He's changed for the better. He actually patches up Frisk's arm and teams up with them for the rest of the story. The story follows a very similar pattern to the original game. It's just that the music is reversed, it's visually gloomier, and of course, the monsters drank evil milk. Speaking of which, let's get into that. Let's start off with Toriel. Appearance-wise, she's much larger and more grotesque than her canon self. More resembling an actual goat, just much more horrific. Fuck, dude. If you showed me that image when I was 8, I would have been put in the same chokehold Smile Dog put me in. She's still kind and motherly, but that is just a front to hide her true sadistic nature. Actually, she's the one who killed all the other fallen children, as they all tried to leave her side but failed. Frisk did the same thing, so Toriel attacks them in an attempt to take their soul. Now for Sans, his size not only increased, but his strength as well. His Gaster Blasters are gone, but his new arsenal makes up for it. He now adopts big meaty claws and a large set of sharp teeth. His bottom jaw is now split in half. A trait that carried over from his canon appearance is how his eye will still glow blue. Like most of the monsters in this realm, he's psychotic. He's out for the blood of any human, although his brother Papyrus is in a different position. So, no head? Sorry, I had to. Papyrus lacks a head, and the base where his head should be just spews out Coke Zero. He doesn't have any arms either. He's not psychotic, but it's not like he can show any emotion. We don't even know how much of his original personality he retained, or what his true intentions are. As for the rest of the characters including Napstablook, Undyne, Asgore, and Muffet, there isn't too much to say about them. It's the same with Toriel and Sans, where they are just Sam Sulek, steroid-injected versions of their former selves. Alphys's design has her fused with all the amalgamates in a cruel twist of karma and irony. Metaton's design is particularly odd. Their design is similar to how Napstablook's design is. In the blog site, a headcanon was confirmed that the monsters' nervous systems are all fucked up. leaving them in zombie-like states. All I have to say is, damn, might as well call this lobotomy tale. Wait, that's probably a thing. I forgot to mention, Burger Pants is completely unaffected in this AU. Like I mentioned before, Underworld was discontinued by its creator. Having said that, if anyone's interested, this AU is now up for grabs. There's also that fan game I mentioned, and from what we have so far, it's pretty solid. It also makes a few changes to the original AU storyline. That gets me to another topic of discussion when it comes to Undertale AUs. A lot of them are just discontinued. The Undertale craze was basically a decade ago. It's only natural that many of the creators have grown out of their creations. I'd love to see how the story ends though. Hey, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. I just want to let you guys know that I will be uploading exclusive content onto my Patreon, including sneaks at future videos and early access. Plus, if you subscribe, you get a shout out at the end of each video. Not only that, you're also supporting me and future videos. All you have to do is click on the link in the description or go to patreon.com/mycaseyvalentine. Then you can subscribe for the low price of $2 a month. Again, it's patreon.com/mycaseyvalentine or click on the link in the description. Now on with the show. Now this next Undertale AU isn't just any Undertale horror AU, it's all of them. Well, at least the most popular ones. What do I mean by that? Is it a project like Underverse? Well, yes, but actually no. It's a bit darker than that. Warning, this AU gave me a ton of head scratches, and you'll probably feel the same way. You'll also say damn way more with this one than the last one. Sans himself puts it best. Timelines jumping left and right, stopping and starting until everything suddenly ends. In the case of Help Tale, many of Undertale's AUs stopped, but rather than be wiped out, they all fused together in one fucked up Lovecraftian salad. Every major character exists as an IT, amalgamations that fuse every incantation of a certain character into an incomprehensible being. Depending on how different each incantation is, their ITs become more or less cohesive to compensate. Just like with Underworld, this AU follows a similar story pattern to the canon, just now involving ITs in the different variants. On February 15th of 2016, a user named Killer the Cat uploaded an IMGR post onto Reddit titled Help Tale Volume No. This post had a series of images with what seemed to be regular Undertale gameplay from a distance. As we already know, it isn't. Some dedicated fans of this AU have gone out of their way to animate the first few gameplay segments, so shout out to them. There is an online document that has a detailed outline on the rules of this universe and its new story. It's really useful because without it, we'd just be left with so many questions throughout this whole thing. Plus, the fake gameplay stopped without covering everything, so at least we have an idea of how the rest of the story will play out. We're in the perspective of a faceless Frisk, or FR_SK. We'll just call them Frisk because it's easier. We first see them approaching Flowey. It appears that he's making gurgling noises. We can see up close that Flowey's face is a bit disfigured. A battle initiates with Flowey, but it's just in stasis. Nothing is happening. Flowey runs away and nothing happens on screen until a speech bubble appears saying die. The game appears frozen until it says, but nobody came. We find ourselves at the entrance of the ruins, with the player saving. The text box first says, null equals var saved text before repeating the word null 8 times. Part 1 ends with the phrase, you're filled with swap_80j. Part 2 continues through the ruins, where we encounter a puddle, though this puddle is actually the IT of Napstablook. Frisk tries to move it with force before battle initiates. They try flirting with it, so then the puddle foams up a little bit. Then they try talking to it, but the puddle can't communicate back. Frisk also pets the puddle, which causes it to spew a strange liquid into the air. When Frisk talks to it again, the puddle starts to sob, repeating no over and over again. Frisk continues to talk to the puddle, to which the puddle stops sobbing. The game congratulates the player, but now the puddle just cries. The options are now blank. When the bottom left selection is picked, the puddle just responds with exclamation points and question marks. The battle wraps up with a text box saying post-battle string BL. Part 3 continues alongside the ruins. Flowey tries to give Frisk something, which is a locket. This locket is the IT of the 6 human souls. Its purpose is to separate the souls within an IT, and it also possesses the ability to absorb souls. Of course, Frisk takes it, resulting in Flowey randomly saying leave before laughing. Flowey starts repeating the phrases thank and help until eventually he dissolves. The document perfectly explains how Flowey's IT works. Flowey as a character is a bit of a curiosity, only existing as a sort of vessel for Azrael's dust essence and determination. Furthermore, some AUs, with Story Shift possibly being the best example, feature other characters existing in the same form of Flowey, so he isn't strictly tied to Azrael across all versions. As a result of this, Help Tails Flowey isn't even a true IT, but is essentially every single character in Undertale as Flowey at the same time, resulting in heavily jarring and contradictory behavior, and being at such odds with itself that it eventually fails to keep itself in one piece and dissolves completely. Back to the story, a blob silhouette approaches Frisk from behind. It says some incomprehensible text, but upon closer inspection it says, "Human, don't you know how to greet a new pal?" If the dialogue and setting don't make it obvious, this is supposed to be the IT of Sans. I think it's better we use its actual badass name, Scaleboner. I mean, Sanstrosity. Part 4 goes more in depth with the battle with Sanstrosity. I think I should read out the description given by the document for Sanstrosity, which also summarizes how the battle went. Probably the most straightforward of the ITs, as Sanstrosity's attacks are characterized by their sluggishness, with easily avoidable rows of bones and slowly sweeping reverse gaster blasters, shoots flaming gasoline out of its many orifices, and is pacified by feeding it snow. It's here where Frisk takes the locket and separates the souls within Sanstrosity. We get the following message: when down, it's time to reset, as something's changed, with it repeating changed over and over. Frisk wakes up and sees Tails and Sans introducing himself. Tails End is an Undertale AU, where the main characters have switched roles in the story. In the case of Sans, he takes the caretaker role, a role filled up by Toriel in the main story. Sans asks Frisk about the IT, to where he brings up how Science Sans has a theory. Science Sans is from an AU where he works with Alphys, as well, a scientist. That's the most basic way I could summarize it. We continue over to part 6, where Tails and Sans introduces Frisk to Science Sans. Science Sans asks Frisk about the IT. He tells Frisk that he doesn't know where they came from and that they're practically immortal, meaning they can't be killed through normal means. He also has info dumps that he tried to kill an IT through abnormal means. Sans then takes Frisk to the Snowden exit, where they can see the IT he was talking about. So then, Frisk gets approached by the Papyrus IT, or the Papalgamit. Everything's happy, the text says. Allow me to read the description for the Papalgamit. Due to the drastically conflicting personalities of its composite parts, the Papalgamit is constantly screaming and occasionally tears at itself. Its attacks prove a greater challenge than those of the Sanstrosity, with additional heads firing beams and additional limbs stretching around and popping up. Is pacified by giving it a hug, followed by bathing it repeatedly. Like the description says, after being hugged and bathed repeatedly, Frisk pacifies the Papalgamit and follows up by using the locket to separate the souls. This part ends with the same message that was given to Sans when separated. In the next part, Frisk comes across a letter. Of course, it's just Papyrus's spaghetti message. Underneath the letter, there's a note with small text that reads out, "Is that the best you can do?" Part 9 starts with Frisk exploring Snowden and eventually meeting Underswap Papyrus. Underswap is an AU where the characters have swapped personalities and roles. In the case of Papyrus, he's more like his brother and vice versa. Papyrus is trying to take Frisk to find the king. Most of this part is pretty much just Frisk following Papyrus's path. After Frisk saves and Papyrus wishes them well, they're then face to face with Fresh Sans. Basically, Fresh Sans is a version of Sans with a 90s persona, so there's his appearance of shades and a backwards cap, as well as his usage of words like bra. Actually, Fresh Sans isn't Sans and is instead a parasite that took over his body. Fresh Sans initiates a battle with Frisk. Part 10 gives us a look into this battle. Fresh Sans puts the player in these predicaments that revolve around the soul skateboarding, while also having some attacks that are just gaster blasters with shades. In between, the player would light a cigarette to the annoyance of Fresh Sans. Once enough cigarettes are lit, Fresh Sans becomes subdued and awakens his true form. The player just responds with having the locket in their hand and absorbing Fresh Sans' soul, defeating him and resulting in the same screen as the other battles. The following part is not numbered. It has the player just trying to open Help Tail on their PC. They even try to open the file directory. After repeated attempts, nothing works out, so they end up having to restart their PC. In part 11, we continue the story. Frisk leaves behind 2 plates of snow-covered food before they bump into Baby Bones Papyrus. Baby Bones Papyrus is just Papyrus as a little kid. He decides the two of them should go on a quest together in search of Papyrus's cat. It's now the player's objective to find the cat, and after searching under a rock and in some trees, the player finds a pit and decides to jump into it. After much exploring, we finally see the cat, who is just a cat version of Papyrus. Once the cat is grabbed, a limb jumps up from the depths. This limb is a part of the Undyne IT. Part 12 displays the battle with the limb. The limb attacks with its many tendrils, and the player can choose to stroke, pull, or tear the limb. After enough actions, the limb just vanishes back into the depths, ending the battle. Frisk leaves the pit and then reunites with Papyrus. Papyrus, excited to see his kitten again, invites Frisk over to his Snowden house. We continue on with Frisk venturing around Snowden. Of course, they eventually meet up with Papyrus. Papyrus welcomes Frisk to his home with open arms. He tells them to come to a place with tasty food. Frisk meets up with underswap Papyrus, who's acting like the two haven't met before. He comes up with a riddle for Frisk to solve. The player solves it and enters inside Grillby's, which is named to El Papyro. Now we see the diner is filled with all kinds of Sanses and Papyruses, including ones we already met and some new ones as well. The player interacts with both Underfell Sans, which is a popular AU where some characters are evil, and Undernovela Sans, an AU based on Spanish telenovelas. Undernovela Papyrus or Papyro asks if there's anything Frisk wants, to which Underswap Papyrus translates for him and suggests chips and salsa. Being the troll that he is, Underswap Papyrus wants to add the ghost pepper sauce. Frisk takes the chips and salsa and moves over to Baby Bones Papyrus's table. Here, Baby Bones Papyrus tells Frisk all about an adventure he had. The story he tells is interesting because it mentions an encounter with a limb. Baby Bones Papyrus decides to try out the chips and salsa, only for his mouth to start burning up. He bumps into Underfell Sans, and in anger, Underfell Sans initiates a battle, only for it to be interrupted by Underfell Papyrus. Baby Bones Papyrus thanks Frisk for saving his life, claiming that Frisk is just as strong as a papyrus. Frisk tries to take the Papyrus exit, but is unfortunately not cool enough. They then try to talk to Under Mafia Sans. I don't think there's much to explain about Under Mafia, it's just Undertale with Mafia elements. Sans just responds with how the Underfell brothers shouldn't be messed with. In the following part, we see Frisk talking to Under Mafia Papyrus at the Snowden Hotel, just to stay the night. Papyrus asks Frisk if they want to join in on the raid that's happening that night. The player chooses yes, so then Papyrus talks about how he wants the recipe for Papyro's tacos, and lets Frisk stay at the hotel free of charge for the night. Some time passes and both Frisk and Sans get ready for the raid. They meet up with Papyrus at El Papyro to set themselves up. The next few parts have the player exploring the kitchen in search of the recipe, while also reading notes and solving riddles. Through these notes, we start to learn that Papyro conducted some kind of unethical experiment for a recipe. Eventually, they approach the last room they need to be in. Here, the Undernovela brothers and the Under Mafia brothers have a standoff. Later, Undernovela Sans warns of a dangerous threat. This causes the Under Mafia brothers to leave. From the corner of the room, an amalgamate that suffused Sans and Papyrus appears. You may also know them as Six Bones. When I tell my homies I love them like a brother, this is what I mean. The story doc tells us that Six Bones can exist as long as the ITs for each respective brother is freed. The entirety of part 18 is the boss battle with Six Bones. The battle has the player dodging all kinds of bones and trying various actions, including hugging Six Bones and having a conversation about puzzle design. The battle ends with the player eating a plate of spaghetti off the floor, making Six Bones feel content. This leads the player to spare Six Bones. Let's just call part 19 a bit of a filler episode. It mainly has the player exploring different parts of Snowden and interacting with different versions of Sans and Papyrus. This theater scene in particular is pretty funny. Towards the end of this part, the player heads out of Snowden. Underswap Sans tries to warn them of the dangers ahead, but the player proceeds and saves the game. Now it's time for our last part. The player explores around Waterfall while also having different encounters with the limb. Of course, we do get that eventual encounter with Undyne's IT, and it plays out similarly to Undyne's battle in the original game, though it takes the player distraction and running away to get away from Undyne. The player reaches Hotland, and the Undyne IT follows, only for the bridge to break under it. This results in the Undyne IT falling in the lava. The last thing we see in this part is a GIF that displays the game tweaking out, where we can see Alfie's for a split second. Before the game crashes, here's where the gameplay segments of Undertale end, but the document gives us an idea of what's to come next. Let's start with the characters we haven't seen yet. There isn't much on Alfie's in Metaton besides their designs and how their societies operate when separated, which I'll get into later. Asgore and Toriel don't have separate ITs. Instead, they share one big one due to their inseparable nature in the fandom. Gaster struggles to keep a physical form because of how different his interpretations are, while Kara exists in two forms, a physical body and a spirit form. If you're wondering about more omnipotent characters like Error Sans and Core Frisk, they exist in this AU, yet the rules don't apply to them. However, they do serve some importance. A section of the document is dedicated to the societies that form as more ITs split. We see the different character societies initially go at odds with each other, and then slowly start to synergize. Once Gasters all split, they work together to figure out the truth behind this universal merge. That leads us to the routes that can be done. The Separatist route is the neutral route and has all the ITs separated, yet not all the alt characters are spared. Here's where the next route differs. In the Preservation route, not only is everyone separated, but everyone is spared. This leads the scientists to come close to finding a way to split the timelines, only for an unexpected visitor to stop them. The Restoration route is essentially the genocide route for Undertale. All the variants have been absorbed, restoring, quote-unquote, this timeline to its original state. After enough souls are absorbed, the player confronts Core Frisk, who ends up being defeated. Right when they're about to absorb Core Frisk, Ink Sans halts the player and abruptly ends the game. Also, Ink Ink Sans is another omnipotent version of Sans who can create objects with a paintbrush. Think of him like Maxwell Sans. He's also the guardian of all the Undertale AUs. The true restoration route continues this route. Now the player has to hunt down the Ink brothers in the world's inner realm. Once they are encountered, they are defeated, and the player continues to take on the god of this universe, an entity called the Fandom. That's meta as fuck. There's also the normal genocide route and an escapist route, which those two are pretty self-explanatory. I think this AU has a lot going for it. The art is actually terrifying to look at. The whole concept of these universes fusing together in a Lovecraftian way is so fascinating, yet so dreadful at the same time. Like, I'm still wondering what caused all this and how much pain the amalgamates feel. I also appreciate, despite the horrors, we also get that Undertale humor. It's just so unfortunate that it's incomplete. I would have loved to see what the rest of this AU looks like visually. I do appreciate the document's existence as well. To reiterate what I said earlier, it gives us a good idea on how this world works and what the rest of the AU could look like. There's probably a bunch of questions I should ask, but I just don't know what. Just like with Underworld, there is a fan-made demo for this AU. Let's just hope it finishes up. Looking at these two AUs just filled me up with so much melancholy. I wasn't too big into the Undertale fandom back in the day, especially because I was like 11 when the game came out. However, I was pretty aware of how big it was, and I remember seeing different fan games and comics about the different AUs and just seeing how creative fans would get. Seeing these projects go abandoned made me feel sad and at the same time. With these two Undertale AUs, I wanted to talk about some projects that haven't been talked about all too much. These two really stood out to me. They had concepts that made them more than just edgier versions of the canon. The world of Undertale AUs expands beyond just those two. There's also Goretale, which mainly exists in the form of art and music tracks. I know some more obvious ones to talk about are Freak Tale, Horror Tale, and Axe Tale, but I'll just say this. Some of those are atrocious, and others are good. It's just I can't say the same thing about their creators. All of these were created at the peak Undertale era, though that doesn't mean that Undertale horror content stops there. It's not always AUs either. There's Slendertale, an Undertale horror fan game with the gameplay aspects of Slenderman. Essentially, you have to find pages to avoid being hunted down by Gaster. There's also Undertale Eternal Darkness, a version of Undertale that's a lot emptier and grittier. I think I could call it like an Undertale version of PT or Amnesia. The YouTuber Unaltered User created a digital horror series using Undertale that follows classic creepypasta tropes, a corrupted copy, an entity of some kind, and whatnot. Even Deltarune has a digital horror series in the form of Asheville Lane. I won't get into that one because two things. I haven't finished Deltarune, and I plan to cover this series in a future video, so stay tuned for that. And how could I forget? The Mount Ebott analog horror series, created by the YouTuber Dr. Flying Fish. This series follows the world of Undertale in analog horror form, but here's the twist. In the second entry for the series, we follow two cavers exploring Mount Ebott, only for them to be eaten. This is strange because we know the monster's main source of food come from magic. So, what happened? Not only do we get the analog horror presentation, we also get a first-person perspective on this version of the underground. Throughout the rest of the series, we see a catastrophe take place in the form of the core being destroyed. As a result, the monsters go through a famine, and Asriel fails to respond to this situation, as it doesn't really affect him. It gets to a point where Toriel protests by starving herself and giving all the food to her kids. This backfires as we see her eat Asriel in a point of desperation. Originally, I wanted to give this series a proper entry, but I didn't because of 4 reasons. It's already a lot more well known compared to the other 2 I covered. Bored Oranges covered it a lot better than I ever could. The video is already long enough as it is, and overall, I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. In general, I'm not too crazy about analog horror, and a lot of it has to do with how fatigued I am with the genre. Don't get me wrong, there are still ones I love like Gemini Home Entertainment and Angel Hair, but most of the time I just find myself getting bored. One of my main problems with the genre is that the analog part is more than just an aesthetic. Plus, most analog horror tend to add on unnecessary elements that take away the fear factor. Unfortunately, this series does both. I also have a few nitpicks like the voice acting and how goofy some of the visuals were. Despite that, I still enjoy the premise and writing. It's just that I wish that everything was executed a lot better. Of course, for a series made by one person, I won't deny the amount of hard work that went into this. I highly recommend you guys check the series out for yourself. Maybe you'll think differently. You can find me in the streets, calling up the cold man, show you my slaughterhouse, take me by the dead hand. At some point in the video, I probably used Gaster's theme. If you mentioned the Mr. Peabody and Sherman meme, or holy fuck I'm coming Lois, you have to cash at me $50. If you got this far, I really can't thank you enough. For the first time since I made that Bikini Bottom horror video, I was actually really invested into making a horror AU video. Undertale is a game I have so much nostalgia for. It was because of Undertale, I started playing games that inspired it, and games inspired by it. So yeah, I use Yume Nikki music because I actually played the game. And sorry if I keep repeating myself, but these AUs AUs follow concepts that are just so cool to me. Like, I couldn't even think of these. I'd love to know what you think. Comment down below your thoughts and any topics I should cover. As I've said many times before, I'm trying to transition away from this horror AU stuff, especially if it's the I word. It's not that I hate doing them. In fact, most of the ones I've covered I enjoy to some extent. It's just not a niche I'm passionate about. When making AU coverage videos, I'm very limited with my creativity. To my misfortune, when I step out of that boundary, those videos perform significantly worse. As much as I appreciate how much those videos blow up, those kinds of videos just feel soulless to me, and I don't want AUs to be the only thing I'm known for. But hey, at least it's better than getting a job. That was cringe. I'm not doing that again. Man, I can finally start that TF2 video. Like, I've been saying I was gonna start it, but I still haven't. But yeah, I'm excited to start on it. Anyways, take care of yourselves, and of course, as usual, please have yourselves a damn good one.